How's it going? Let's see. So tonight, I know I did a stream earlier and I mentioned that I was going to do a little bit of OpenStack stuff where we were converting or migrating really from Shibboleth to Mod Melon. Still going to finish that. We'll be working on that tomorrow. I'm going to do that during the day, during kind of business hours. Since that's kind of my day job, I figure I might as well finish that during the day and work on that during the day. But tonight, I thought it might be kind of fun to make something new. I have a younger brother that he plays a lot of video games and streams here on Twitch. And one of the things he kind of hit me up about, he was having some trouble with, was, hey man, I need some help with my Nightbot. I don't really know how this works, blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, man, if only you knew a programmer that could help you out. And he was like, oh, shoot, I forgot. My brother, he's a software developer. And so I hopped in, helped him get his bot fixed up, and I started kind of poking around, and I thought, man, there's some pretty cool stuff you could do with this Nightbot. You know, it'll make calls to a remote URL. That URL can return JSON, or it can just be plain text. And so it kind of got the wheels turning for me, and I was like, man, I bet there's some people out there that have some like stats or, interesting stuff, what have you, that they would like to put onto into their Twitch, or wherever it is you're running Nightbot. I think it runs on Mixer and a few other places as well. So I thought, man, I should do a little video on how to make like a basic API, and then we can kind of expand on that and get first we'll start with some basic little jokes or things like that, and then just kind of expand on it and see where we get. So that's what we're doing tonight. So without further ado, let's hop into our IDE here. I always like to use PyCharm. I use the pay version because I write software for a living, and so I like to pay for the advanced features that you get. But they have a community edition that you can install, and you can use that yourself. If you don't want to pay for it, you can just use the community edition. It'll get you pretty far. You won't be able to do exactly what I'm doing here tonight, but it'll get you pretty close. So let's go ahead and start a new project. So we'll click here on the new project button, and I am going to call this Nightbot API. And this is going to be a Flask app. And we are going to want to create a new virtual environment for this. And I keep my virtual environments in my home directory in a folder called VEnVs. And so I'm going to name this one Nightbot API. And I'm going to do this in 2.7, I think. Let's see. I can't remember if I have 3 installed on this machine or not. So 2.7 is fine. If you want to use 3, I'll try and point out the differences I go along for things that, you know, are specific to 2 that might not work in 3. So let's see here. Template language. We're gonna use Jinja if we do any templates, which we're not going to at first, but we might. We might add some later. So we'll go ahead and set that. And just verify this is all correct before we go ahead and hit create. And that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and click create. Now I think I'm going to have to add this window to OBS, so give me just one moment. Add that. There we go. All right. Let's see here. Hopefully that shows up for everybody. And yay, it worked. Okay. So this will give us a basic Flask app right here. And we can see that our Python interpreter that's being used is users venvs Nightbot API bin Python. So we know our virtual environment is being used. Excuse me. And we get a couple of folders. Static. This is where our static content is going to go. Templates. This is where our templates are going to go. And app.py. This is the start of our application. So if we were to run this right now, go up here and click run. We get a little pop-up down here at the bottom. We could click on that link, and what this is doing is it's running our basic hello world, because it creates hello world for us. And so we could click on that link that it provides us, and that would open in a browser for you. Let's add that window there so you can take a look at what will happen. Here we go. Hello world. You resize that a little. It's taking up the whole screen here. There we go. So when you click it, it takes you to the instance of the web app, and you get hello world. And that's all you get. But we know our application is functional. So we're going to go ahead and stop that. So we come back over to our PyCharm window. And if we look right over here, we can see the client 127.0.0.1 made a GET request to slash, got a 200, also made a GET request for /fav icon.ico, got a 404. We'll take care of that 404 later. But this is some debug output that you can use when you're testing your application. So we're going to go ahead and come up here to the top right. There's a little red square, and if you hover over it, it'll say Stop Nightbot API. So we're going to go ahead and click that. And down here in our output window, it'll say Process Finished with Exit Code 0. So that means we've stopped our application, and it's no longer running. No big deal. So now this isn't super useful at this point. We're going to need to add some code to this so that we can make it do something. So I'd like to add an endpoint called /API. So to do that, we're going to use the syntax that is already defined for us up here at the slash, which is just the root of our application, the def hello world. And we're just going to leave that hello world there for right now. We'll change that later as we make some progress. But for now, we're just going to kind of copy that syntax and do an app.route. If I can find the keys. And we're going to do /API. And let's add something to that. Let's do jokes. Let's be a little more specific though, and call them dad jokes. Dad_jokes. I like that. So we're going to def dad jokes. And we're not going to have any parameters for right now because we're just going to return a random dad joke. Like for right now, let's just make it return one dad joke. And then what we'll do is we'll expand on that by adding a database here in a few minutes and putting our dad jokes into an API and getting a random number generator and pulling out a random actually we won't need a random number generator, but we'll make a call and get a random dad joke from the API, things like that. But for now, let's just return one random dad joke. And we're going to return that in plain text right now. According to the Nightbot API docs, you can return up to, I want to say like 400 characters with in plain text. Let's take a look before we get too far here. Nightbot, custom commands. Oh, whoops, that's Nightbot. Let's get into the Nightbot API. Here we go. Also not what I'm looking for, Nightbot. API docs, that's what we're looking for. And we want the URL fetch. Whoops. Okay, yeah. So when you're using URL fetch, which was formerly known, and let me put this up for you so you can see the so you can see the documentation I'm looking at here. There we go. So we're at docs.nightbot.tv/commands/variables/URL fetch. So this command was formerly known as custom API. And I believe I was using custom API on my brother's bot the other night. and that still works. It's probably deprecated and going to be replaced at some time, but it does not have a date for removal yet. So, but anyway, this was formerly known as Custom API. Variable calls a remote URL to retrieve and display a response. It's useful for building more complex commands that Nightbot does not support. It says here the URL that returns a body in plain text with less than 400 characters in response. So it also supports JSON, and if you return JSON, then your characters can be greater than 400. So we will start with the plain text, and then we will move to JSON just to make sure. I like to go in steps, in stages. So whenever I'm working on some code, I like to get like a basic thing working, and once that works, you know, I will take the next step, upgrade it to something else. So here, let's get back over to our code. Whoops. Yes, I'm looking at my stream. Here we go. OBS. I make mistakes all the time. In code, on the internet, it just happens. So turn Chrome off. There we go. I'm new to this whole streaming thing. It's kind of neat. All right. So now that we have our IDE back in focus, we are going to get a dad joke. I don't really know any dad jokes, despite the fact that I am a dad. I typically come up with bad dad jokes on the fly as my children make comments to me. So for now, I'm just going to do a quick dad joke Google. And 40 best. Did you hear about the restaurant on the moon? Great food, no atmosphere. That sounds fantastic. So we're just going to return that as our dad joke. Let's get over here to the IDE, and we are going to return. There we go. Well, that's a little longer than 80 characters. So, gonna wrap that there. Oops. And we'll do that. There we go. So we've declared a variable here called joke. And we've said, did you hear about the restaurant on the moon? And we added a space here. And then we're going to concatenate these strings together and say, great food, no atmosphere. And then we're going to return that joke whenever somebody hits /API/dadjokes. So we're pretty confident that this is going to work, but let's go ahead and test it out. It's a very basic thing, just like our hello world. It's basically hello world with a slight change in text. So we'll go ahead and run that. And go to _dad jokes. And sure enough, that worked. We hit that and we get our expected output of, did you hear about the restaurant on the moon? Great food, no atmosphere. Fantastic. Now, what else could we make some funny little calls about? I don't know. I'm getting old now. When I was a youth on the internet coming up, learning all this stuff, Chuck Norris was a huge thing. I don't know if Chuck Norris is still that huge, but there is definitely still some websites out there with Chuck facts. So let's add some Chuck facts. And so we'll do another app.route. And we're going to give this a path of /API and Chuck fact. And again, we're not going to take any parameters right now, but we're going to change that. So we'll say fact equals, I don't know. Let's do a Chuck fact. Google. Chuck Norris facts. Well, this is interesting. Here's an API called the Internet Chuck Norris Database. Fantastic. I can't believe these things exist. So they have an API. I tell you what, let's add some functionality to this bad boy right now. I'm going to go ahead and create a new file, and this is going to be a requirements.txt. And we are going to add requests. All right, and if you notice here, our PyCharm is saying, hey, this requirement is not satisfied. So I'm going to go ahead and install that just by clicking that little button up there. And that is going to install requests into our virtual environment for us. And it says down here at the bottom, if we look, that this was successfully installed moments ago. Package installed successfully. Installed package requests. So we're good to go. We're going to go ahead and close that file. And instead of just setting the fact to some hard-coded fact, let's call their API. Why not, right? They've already got an API. It's already calling. They've got their own. Looks like they've got their own pretty good sized Chuck Norris fact database. So let's just use theirs. So let's see, how does their API work? Let me put it on Chrome so you can see what I'm looking at here. Looks like you just make a basic GET request, and let's set up a random joke. So it looks like this is the GET request that we would need to make. Let's try that out. We're going to come over here and open a terminal in our IDE to test this out. So let's switch back over to our IDE. And I recently updated. Let's see, where did they move the terminal to? Terminal, there we go. Just too small. All right, let's curl that. All right. So it looks like that works. Chuck Norris sits at the stand-up. Okay, that's not very great, but it's there, right? And it looks like their random joke generator is coming forth. We got a success. And by the way, this is JSON that's being returned by their API. This will all be handled automatically for us by request, which is why I decided to go ahead and use it. So if you don't want to use that and you just want to use standard Python libraries, well, you're already breaking the rules by going with Flask, so, but whatever. But you could use URL request instead. I don't know why you'd want to, but you could do it. So here, CNN was originally created as the quote. I assume this we'll have to see how we convert quotes. I imagine there's something magical in that we can handle that'll URL escape that. If not, there's URL escaping built into Python natively, so we can take care of that without a problem. CNN was originally created as the Chuck Norris Network to update Americans with the spot-on ass-kicking in real time. All right, so let's go ahead and get this into our API. We're going to use our API to call their API and get a fact back. Now, this could be taxing on somebody else's API, but for the purposes of this demonstration, it's not going to be a big deal because we're not going to sit there and hammer on it. Now, if you're going to put something like this into production, which I'm going to do, I'm going to implement the right way to do this, which is going to be to cache these facts in a local database, or we'll just cache them in something, right? So that we're not making constant calls to their API to flood them out. We'll make we'll see if they have any rules set up that they like people to follow. If not, I can come up with some pretty reasonable rules on my own, on not beating somebody up. So, but for now, let's go ahead and set the fact. Well, first, we need to import requests. So we're going to come up here and import requests. And then we're going to set our chuck fact equals requests.get. And the first thing it takes is a URL. And so we saw down below that the URL is http://icnb.icnb.com/jokes/random. All right. So the next thing we're going to need to do is chuck fact equals chuck fact dot, I believe it's content. I'm going to swear to it. Oh, maybe it's JSON. No, I think it's content. We'll have to try a couple of these because it's been a while since I've used requests. In fact, let's just look that up so we get it right on the first time. Go back to Chrome here and requests, get JSON response. Here we go. Response objects called R. Okay, let's actually rename that then to response. That makes more sense, since that will better define what we're dealing with. And here we go. Content would give us the whole thing. Okay. All right, so before we start processing this, we want to make sure we're getting a 200 back, right? Because if we don't get a 200 back from our API, then we're not going to have the response content to show someone. So if response dot status code is greater than 200, yeah, they could move it, but yeah, we'll deal with that some other day. We'll pass on this for right now. But this is going to be where we set up our, if it's greater than 200, we will need to do something. We're going to come back to this. To do handle bad response. For now, we're just going to pass. That's a built-in function in Python that will let us just kind of pass, excuse me, and basically do nothing. So let's see here. I need to take a quick break. So let's turn this off, and we'll turn this off, and we'll turn this off. And how about stare at this cute cat? I will be back in about 5 minutes, maybe less, maybe even more like 3 minutes. So see you in just a couple minutes. All right, I'm back. It didn't take as long as I thought. All right, so where were we here? Okay. Turn off the crazy cat. Hello, I'm back. Let's see, we had the Python code up. Yeah, there we were. All right. So we're actually going to wrap this in a try catch as well. So Except in Python, I think it's called accept. Yeah, there we go. I don't know exactly what this will throw right now, so we're going to leave it as nothing, and it's just going to be a generic catch-all. And we're going to pass when we catch it too, for right now. We're definitely going to change that and catch, you know, we'll look at the documentation, see what all kinds of things it'll throw. We can even just throw in exception for right now. It's very generic, but then we'll add in a to-do here as well. I think if we get one of these, like a bad response code, or if an exception is thrown, what we may do here is just pull from our local database, right? Like pull from the cache, pull from local database, and just serve something up. That way, you know, the user still gets a response, and hopefully it won't be something catastrophic, right? But I can't imagine it being something that would even crash the app, so, but it could be, very unlikely. So what we'll do for now is just plan on returning, you know, something from our local database. All right. So here's one of the great things that I love about Python. So if you see up here in our Python environment, whoa, hello, what's going on? What did I just do? Whoops, whoops, whoops. Okay. Now if you see here in this, in our IDE, we're on PYENV Nightbot, and so our Python environment is that Nightbot API virtual environment that we created. So we can come down here to our terminal, and just to test this out real quick, so we don't have to write code and a bunch of stuff to handle, you know, let's just import requests, and then let's say our response equals Well, let's just make this API call right here. And there we go. Now we can check out this response, see how we're going to handle it, and kind of inspect it without having to fire up our application. So let's just start with, and this is going to be kind of ugly, right? But we'll just print the response. And so we got a 404. That's not good. Let's see here. How come? What did we get wrong? Did we get the URL wrong? I think we did. Yes, we did. It is ICNBD. ICNBD. Oh, there we go. See, we made a mistake already. Okay. Uh-oh, we did something wrong again. Connection error. Failed to establish unknown host. So I'm really bad. API IC in. Oh, I bet it's DB. Kind of dyslexic. Yep, it is. Dyslexia kicking in. There we go. Now we got a good response. I bet. Let's check that. Now we got us a 200. So we have a response object. Class, requests, models, response. Right? So we have ourselves a response object. Now let's see what all we have available in there. So to do that, we do a dir on the response. And ignoring all of the underscore and dunderscore deals, we've got encoding, close, connection, content, cookies, elapsed, encoding, headers, history, is permanent redirect, is redirect, iter content, iter lines, JSON, links, next, okay, raise for status, raw, reason, request, status code, text, and URL. So let's go with content. Let's just see what happens if we do content. All right. Let's see if we access this like a dictionary. And we take value and get joke. Nope. I get the syntax wrong. Let's do .get value joke. All right. Let's see what our type is here. String. Okay, let's go with the JSON then. Excuse me. Goodness. Big storm blew in. Got my allergies going crazy. Instance method. There we go. But it looks weird. So we want to import URL. Is it all one word? I cannot remember. Nope. That can't be right. Now let's see what it's called. Let's see here. Oops. URL lib. Okay. So we're going to want to URL encode this. If I can spell it right. So this is one of those places where Python 2 and Python 3 is going to differ. So in Python 2, it looks like we're going to want to use urllib.quote plus. think. Or is it parse? Maybe it's just URL encode. Let's try that. We can try a few different things. Exploration is good. Not a valid string. Okay. So what kind of document are we working with? Data are we working with here? Probably UTF-8, but we'll see. Yep, Unicode. So probably have to make this a string first because Python 2. Let's see if that fixes it. Well, it does not. Not a valid non-string sequence. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, so when you don't know how to use something, the documentation and the source are the best things to go to. So we're going to try the documentation first. URL encode. Let's just go with encode. And this searches, you can search this just like a man page, so in Linux or Unix. And so if you're in a man page within Linux and Unix and you want to search it, just use the /, type your search parameter, hit enter. And that's not what we want. All right. Encode a sequence of 2-element tuples or dictionary into a URL query string. Oh, I guess we want to decode, not encode. Decode. There we go. Oh, come on. Or do we? What is it actually returning us? That's good to know. Yeah, here we go. Unquote. URL lib unquote. Okay, let's try that. So this is saying we need URL lib 2. So I've removed URL lib. We'll import URL lib 2. And then we will print oops, we're going to change that to URL lib 2 and switch this to uncode. Ugly. Unquote. Unquote. Well, that didn't work at all. Internet, you lied to me. Why are you going to lie to me, Internet? Let's try this one. We're going to bring URL lib back. And go there and unquote. We'll decode because we have Unicode. UTF-8. We'll see if the internet is right here. Oh my god, internet! I'm the worst Googler of all times. Oh, Google, why you fail me? Oh, Google, why you fail me? Ugh. Let's see. Come on. Why is it doing this to me? Do you know the answer? Are you watching my Twitch stream right now and you know the answer to this? This is very annoying. I do not know the answer to this, and I'm failing at the Google. Why, oh why, oh why? These kind of problems always end up being the stupidest freaking solution. Like probably something I'm doing wrong. It's always a user error. Always, always, always. I swear most of my job is failing all day long, 4 days a week, and then like 6 hours of the 5th day I fail for like 2 hours of success. That's the way it works. To be successful at this, I swear the best thing to do is to just not get frustrated. Know that you are the one making the mistake because you are telling the computer to do the wrong thing, and eventually, when you figure out the right thing to tell the computer to do, it does it. But until then, oh my gosh, it just does not do what you want it to do. So we've got the... We'll get this right here in just a second. I know we will. Am I still converting this stupid thing to a string? No. Okay. I wonder if this is supposed to be parse. I don't know. I know this is easy to do once you know the right thing to do. It's like one thing. Excuse me. You know what? I don't want to get bogged down on this. And so I'm just going to move on and we'll fix this problem here in a minute. It'll probably just spring into my head all at once. It'll be like, oh yeah, you were supposed to do this, durr. So let's just move on. So now we have our response. And if our response is greater than 200, we're going to handle the bad response. If an exception handles, we're going to have to handle the bad response. And so at this point, we should have a valid response if we get all the way to here. So we know from a moment ago that we needed to use response.json. And we're going to do a get. And this may need to change because this may be the whole reason our fact is failing. Who knows? So we're going to get the value. And from there, we're going to get the joke. And now we have an actual joke. And we're going to return said chuck fact. Dun-dun-dun. So let's test this and see if it works. All right, so we have that. Now let's come over here and pull up our Chrome. All right, and instead of hitting dad jokes, we are going to hit chuck fact. Oh, because I misspelled it. Look at that. I put check fact. Chuck fact. Hit save. Now we need to stop that and start it again because we made a change. Let's try this again. Internal server error. Let's see what happened. Oh, I never fixed the URL up here. This is a good place where we should have caught this exception. Let's see here. What exception was actually thrown so we can know what to catch next time. An unbound local error. That wasn't even caught in here. That was thrown out here. Fantastic. What a way to fail. All right. So we've made that change. We're going to stop and we're going to start and we're going to try this again. And there we go. Chuck Norris was the original sculptor of Mount Rushmore. He completed the entire project using only a bottle opener and a drywall trowel. That's funny. Okay. So, I think we should save some of these facts in our own database so that we don't have to constantly call out, or if we have a problem, if their API is down, we can still serve up a chuck fact. So let's go ahead and turn the Chrome off. And let's see here. Stop our application. And switch over to terminal. Back to our Python session. Alright, so it looks like Python, at least my version here, has shipped default with SQLite 3. So I am just going to use that. You could use any database you want here. You could use MySQL, whatever you want to use, Postgres, whatever. I don't care. I'm not going to cover those because that's way overkill. Even if we had a whole bunch of users hitting this, I think we could serve up our content fast enough with SQLite that it really wouldn't make a difference, especially in my case. So, but do realize that if you want to make this big and fast, SQLite is not going to be what you want to go with. You're going to need a real database server. So let's see here. What we got to do to add SQLite. Guess first we're going to have to import it, and since it is a not some third-party thing, we will put it above the requests import. Now, it has been ages since I used SQLite from Flask, so I'm going to go look up what do we have to do to use SQLite from Flask. I do not want to use SQL Alchemy. I just want to use SQLite. SQL Alchemy is something you could use in your application so that you are going to use SQLite, for example, during development. But when you're ready to go to production, maybe your prod servers run on Postgres or MySQL. Using something like SQL Alchemy would let you abstract that out a bit, so it would be a little easier for you to switch to something else during when you move from dev to prod, and hell, even have something different in staging, right? So give me just a moment here. Getting some stuff over here on my iPad. All right, sorry about that. Let's see here. Let's take a look at this together. And I'm in Chrome. Excuse me. So using SQLite 3 with Flask, it's very easy. We import it. Gonna have to add a new Flask import. So we shall do that. And let's define our database file. And I know you can't see what I'm doing here, but I am just copying this stuff into the code. I'll switch back over in just a moment. And we are going to call this our Nightbot db.db. Yeah, why not? I will name it SQLite3. .SQLite3. That way we know what kind of file it is later when we go to look at it. Okay, let me switch screens here in OBS so you can see what we're doing here. Excuse me. All right. Okay, here we go. So we've got our database file defined. And what I've done is just // which is the current working directory. And we're calling this nightbotdb.sqlite3. Okay, and next it's got a def get db. And db equals get adder g database and none. If db is none, db equals g dot underscore d ATA excuse me, equals SQLite3 dot connect database, and that should create it for us. And then we want to return DB. Then we need to set up an app.teardown app context and def close connection db equals get adder g. Goodness. If db is not none, so as long as it exists, we want a db.close. All right, so that should take care of that for us. Excuse me. Goodness. Those allergies kicking in hardcore tonight. Had a big storm blow into South Texas a couple of days ago. Oops, sorry. I had to close my laptop lid a little bit. And whenever the weather changes drastically like that, we went from 100-degree weather to like 80s or something. It was just a huge change overnight. And then I think we got 7 to 10 inches of rain. When that happens, man, that just kills my allergies. Get all plugged up, get stuck on the Claritin D, taking the Flonase. It's a mess. All right. Let's see here. Enough about me. Let's get back to this code. So, how do we insert our sweet data into this database now that we've got it? I feel like we need to create a schema. Otherwise, how the heck are we going to know what to put in it and how it's supposed to go? Let's see. There's bound to be something here. Let me show you what I'm looking at here, which is the SQLite Flask documentation. So now to use the database, the application must either have an active application context, which is always true if there is a request in flight, or we create an application context itself. At that point, the getDB function can be used to get the current database connection. Whenever the context is destroyed, the database connection will be terminated. If we use Flask 09 or older, we need to use something that's not relevant to us, I believe. Let's check and see what version of Flask we're running. And to do that, we shall pip freeze. And it looks like we're using Flask 1.0.2. So this is not relevant to us, so we're going to skip it. Nothing I hate more than learning things that don't matter to me. And connect on down. All right. The upside of the connect on demand approach is that this will only open the connection if it's truly necessary. If you want to use this code outside a request context, then you can use it in a Python shell by opening the application context by hand. Okay. I think I'm happy with what we have for right now. If we need to change it, we can change it later. It's code. It's not stone, you know. We're just experimenting right now. We're not doing anything super important. We're trying to learn here. So, but if there's one thing I do know, we can't just go insert stuff into a database. Oh, here we go. Initial schemas. Relational databases need schemas. Of course they do. Otherwise, where the heck are you going to put the stuff? Who's going to know where it goes? So, we shall ship a schema.sql file that creates the database. It's a good idea to provide a function that creates the database based on that schema. This function can do it for you. Heck yeah. Let's create the schema first. So let's create a new file, and we will call that Nightbot db_schema.sql. Let's see what this does, because I don't even know. So you see, whenever I typed whenever I created that file, my IDE said no data sources are configured to run this SQL and provide advanced code assistance. Hey, we're using the IDE for a reason. We might as well take advantage of all of the things it has to offer, and apparently it knows what the heck SQLite is. So I do not know what this is up here. I've never used any of this stuff. org.sqlite.jdbc. This is so this IDE that I use, PyCharm. It's also IntelliJ, PHP Storm, all the different things that JetBrains has to offer. This IDE is actually written in Java, and so the library, this is going to be the library that it's using to connect to SQLite. So that's where the JDBC is, the Java database connections. And the dialect we're going to use is SQLite. And code style is default, I guess. Schema control, automatic. Sure, why not? Who knows what this stuff does? Looks like I don't have that. We're going to need to download it. Fantastic. And that's Apache license. We love that. Okay. Well, why not? We hit OK. Who knows what the hell is going to happen? Maybe it'll do something cool. So we want to create. Oh, you know what? You don't have to create a database in SQLite because just opening the file creates said database. So I betcha. Let's see here. Go with this here. Okay. So we just have to start creating some tables. And these are going to be some pretty basic tables, at least at first. I mean, you know. So we'll go with create, table. We're going to call this one Chuck Fact. And do we have to back tick that? Doesn't look like it in SQLite, so we'll see. And what the heck is that? That seems weird. Let's read. Okay. So the first thing we're going to have is a... I wonder how you create a primary key. At least a key. We'll just call this one. I wonder if they have an auto incrementing ID. There's got to be. SQLite 3 auto increment. There we go. Let's see. Oh, and what does this say? And why you should avoid using it. All right, well, let's see. I'm telling you, I learn something new every day. It's different for everything. All right. How old is this article? Probably from early 2000s. Why don't they have a date? Man, this is the worst. Yeah, we'll read it anyway. What? Is that right? Does it really do that? I don't even know. Let's test that. Alright, so we're going to touch a test DB, and then we're going to SQLite 3 test DB, and then create a table. People. First name, text, not null. Last name, text, not null. I'm going to do that. Okay. And then we're going to insert into people, first name, last name, values, John Doe. And is it describe? Is it show info? I cannot remember. I cannot remember. Let's see what help says. Oh, it's not a liar. That's weird. It doesn't show up in the schema, you know, like if you just do a select star. So you have to implicitly say you want the row ID. Neat. Hey, I just learned something new. I don't know about you, but I did. And that's good. I like to learn new stuff. Oh, look, we still don't have a data source configured up here. That's weird. Thought we just did that. Driver file, template. Why doesn't it ask us where a file location for the database is? That seems obvious to me, right? That seems like what it's missing. Where is your database located? Oh, it's over here, computer. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Interesting. So, we get an auto incrementing ID on our table, but if we go back and look at the data that is being returned from our UR or from our API, I believe I remember it having a its own ID. Yes, it did. So there we go. It had, in this case, ID number 49. So I feel like we should store that so that we can look up and see do we already have joke ID 49? If not, let's insert it. And who cares what auto increment we get from our own internal thing? You know, we can know if we've already pulled. You know, we'll store 49 as well as like the remote ID, right? So that we know this thing's got a remote ID of 49. Who cares really what the local ID of it is? Not really relevant, right? It's just there. So let's do that. So based on what they're giving us in the value, we get an ID, a joke, and categories. But each one of the categories has been blank every time so far. And it says here on the API documentation that they do have categories implemented, but we have yet to actually see a category tag on an API call. Not to say that doesn't exist, because we've only called the API 4 times at this point, and 2 of which we didn't actually see the whole response. We just got what we wanted from it. So let's see. Let's go ahead and turn off Chrome, and we'll switch back over to our code, and let's start to implement this stuff. All right. So we're going to create a table called ChuckFact, and in it we are going to have a remote ID, which is who knows, what is that? Is that a number? Integer? We need to know what they call these things here. Probably an integer. Let's see. Might just be int. Whoa, hey. Not what I wanted. So integer. Okay. For some reason I feel like SQLite cares about case, but I could be wrong. Okay, so we want a remote ID of an integer. Then we want a joke, And that is going to be of type text. I don't think it's message text. I believe it to be just text, computer. And I believe that's all we're going to need right there. Right? We've got our remote ID and our joke value. Let me just pop this documentation open just to make sure. So integer is the value, singled integer, 8 bytes. That should be plenty big for what we're going to be storing. Can't imagine this place has got more than 100 or a couple hundred jokes at best. Text, the value of a string. Yeah, I don't think we're going to need to store this as a blob. So yeah, I believe integer and text are going to be what we need here. And that should be all. Now, let's look back at the application. And remember, we also had dad jokes. And we just hard-coded a dad joke. So let's go ahead and just create a table while we're in here for dad jokes. And I bet money that we could find a dad joke REST API out there. Let's see. Dad joke REST API. Oh my gosh. So has dadjoke.com/API. Oh, who would have ever guessed in a million years? Excuse me. No authentication is required to use hasdadjoke.com. Enjoy. API response. All API endpoints follow their respective browser URLs, but we adjust the response formatting to be more suited for an API based on the provided HTTP accept header. Okay, so we can send our request so that it has application JSON in the accept response, or in the accept header, and it will return us a JSON response. So let's see what that request looks like. We're gonna .quit and escape that file, and let's do a curl. I believe it's capital H. Hey, accept application/JSON, and what is the URL? It is HTTP hasdadjoke.com/API. Make sure that's right. Oh, we may not even have to add the API part. Let's see. Ah, man, I've got to learn to type. Dad joke. Moved permanently. Where did it move? Let's try HTTPS. There we go. So it permanently moved itself to SSL. Hey, good for them. All right. I cut my finger cutting cheese. I know it may be cheesy, maybe a cheesy story, but I feel great now. Oh man, I love a good dad joke. All right, so with those, we get an ID. Crikey, that's a weird ID. Why don't they just give you a number? They must have a lot of these things. Or at least they're planning on it. Who knows? That looks like the start of some kind of Shah or something. So, we'll just do the exact same thing. I wonder if you can request it by the ID. Fetch a dad joke ID. It looks like it. Let's try that. J, and let's call this exact one that we just got back. See if that works. And it certainly does. Okay, so we are going to create table dad joke, and we are going to call a remote ID again, but this time it's going to be a text. And I really hate that they did that, because now number comparisons are super fast, right? Like if you do a number lookup, like 10 equals 10, it's much faster to compare an integer than it is to do string comparisons. Now, because our API is really not going to be that big, we're not going to get a lot of traffic on it. You know, it's for our Nightbot. I'm not going to go share the URL to my API with everybody on the internet. You know, it's just for me and my brother and maybe a couple of his buddies, so that we can goof around with our Nightbots. So I'm not super worried about the amount of time that it's going to take for these comparisons, but just keep in mind, like if you're doing this for like a business, right? Like if you're using this goofy little example I'm making and you're like, man, I'm going to do something at work, blah, 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 that, you know, don't do string comparisons for ID lookups. You use a number if you can. You know, when you start getting up into the thousands and maybe even millions of records, especially if those text fields get big, you're really going to suffer if you don't use an integer. So just keep that in mind. If you're wondering, I am sipping on some beer this evening. It's a delicious beer. It's only available here in Texas, and it is real ale. It's a Goza, I don't know. German style wheat beer. I like it. Pretty good. That'll be the last one of those this evening. All right, so let's see here. We had a remote ID of text and a joke with a value of text as well. And for now, I believe that is going to be all that we're going to need in our database. And this can grow, right? Like we can add more stuff to this later. Now, if we go change the schema of those tables above, you know, there's going to be a little more work involved. But if we need to add additional tables to our existing database, that shouldn't be too big of a deal. But for now, I think a Chuck Norris fact and a dad joke, I think that's all we're going to need for now. So we're just going to stick with that. All right. Make sure our IDE is still in focus. It is. Good news. So now let's go back to our application, and we need to look at the SQLite documentation one more time and do this def init db. So above our teardown context, we're going to go ahead and add a new function. And I just copy and pasted that for right now. But because we created Nightbot DB, I'm going to be renaming that. In fact, I'm going to do it up here. And that is going to be Nightbot db.sql. And here we will do schema. There we go. That should be all we need there. Excuse me. Goodness. All right. And to keep our pep8 happy, we need to hit enter there and enter here. And here as well. All right, hang on just a second. I need to pop off camera for just a moment. Oh, bye. All right, there we go. Now get the camera back on. There we go. All right. So at this point, we have a function to get our database, a function to initialize our database, and a function to tear down the context where the database is opened during a request. So how do we insert a joke that we have fetched from our database? How do we insert a joke that we've requested into our database? That sounds better, right? Okay, so let's go back here. Let's just start our app, right? We've made quite a few changes to our app. How do we even know that the stupid thing works still? I don't know. I don't know if it works. I have no idea, right? Well, doing this isn't going to start the database though, right? Oh yeah, let's see. Okay, so what we'll initially do is read this in. That's what we're hoping happens. And have it create this file. Let's start the app and let's see, does that happen? I don't know. I don't think so. It doesn't look like it. I didn't see Nightbot db.sqlite3 pop up anywhere. Nope, I do not see that. Let's hit the API and just see what happens. I am still not seeing it there. So we must need to do more. What more must we do? You can then create such a database from the Python shell. From your application, import a initdb and then run a initdb. Well, interesting. So let's do that. That should initialize our stuff. So we start the Python console. Then from Nightbot API, we want to import initdb. Okay, well, that's not very happy. Okay, let's see. From app, let's try that. Import initdb. That worked. Okay. Then we call initdb. Oh, we got us an error in there. Okay. So near the closing parentheses of something. What the hell did we do? Oh, I bet it's a missing comma there. Let's try that. Usually things are pretty picky about that. Nope. Okay. Could be the fact that we've got that there. Let's try that. Yep, it was the addition of the comma. Some SQL languages are more forgiving than others. SQLite is, in my experience, a very picky and particular thing when it comes to syntax. So let's see. Now we have our database file over here. I see it. Nightbot db.sqlite3. So let's go ahead and exit. And we'll use the command line tool to Nightbot db.sqlite3, and then we'll do tables. And we have Chuck Fact and Dad Joke. And I wish I could remember what the description command was. Let's see. On MySQL, it's DESC for describe. I cannot remember what it is. I bet if we do SQLite 3 to MySQL commands. Is there a SQLite equivalent to MySQL's describe? You can use .schema without the table and it'll show you all of them. Or we can use .schema with a table name and it'll tell us that. So there we have the table or the stuff that was created. So there we go. Perfect. And we're going to need to quit. And I have to take just a short break. Let's see here. Enjoy this cat gif. I will be back in about 3 minutes. All right, I'm back. Let's see what we need to do here. Where was I? Okay. Let's turn off the cat. Turn off the BRB. Turn on PyCharm. Get our camera back to going. Okay. So, I think where we were when I left, yes, okay, we had just looked over the schema of the database that we created, and that was all good and fancy. Now, we could put that creation into the application itself, but we really don't need to. What we'll actually end up doing is creating an installation file when this is all said and done, so that when we deploy it on our server, it'll just create that database for us, and then we can try and handle updates to the schema within that installation and stuff like that. But for now, this is how we're going to do it, just so that we can keep deving. So now that we've got our dad joke API that we found, we're going to replace this hard-coded nonsense with something very similar to what we have down here in our chuckvax. We're going to do the same try catch. We're going to make a call to that remote API. We're going to get back our data from the dad jokes, and then return that response. And we'll stop there before we start inserting these jokes into our own database. So let's go ahead and get that added. So we're going to try, and we're going to set up response equals requests dot get. And what was that URL that we were curling? Because I would like to just copy and paste it. I like a little copy pasta. There we go. I'm a professional at copying and pasting from Stack Overflow. Haha, there we go. Actually, I answer way more questions than I ask there. I like to help people out with this. I got my start doing this programming stuff about 12 years ago. Just kind of tinkering. I was like, man, how do you do that? You know, how does this work? How does somebody put up a website? What is that all about? And thankfully, the open source community was there with open arms, you know, kind of rude. You know, back 10, 12 years ago, IRC was a very different place. People would ridicule you and all kinds of stuff, but they would eventually help you. But man, oh man, did you have to put up with some real choice people before they would actually answer your questions. They like to try and make you feel as dumb as possible. I don't like that approach. I think everybody should be able to know how to do this stuff. And so I've always tried to give back by helping out that way. Whoa, hey, where are all my keys? So we're doing the same if the response code is greater than 200. So for those of you that don't know what HTTP response codes are, you definitely should check that out. There is probably a Wikipedia page. Of course there's a Wikipedia page. There's a Wikipedia page for everything. So things in the 200s are, I'm going to just go ahead and pull this up and we'll talk about it for just a second. So things in the 200s are success. 200 being the default success. 201, you're going to get, like if you create something within an API, like if you post or put, well, post, because put you're typically updating, you'll get back to 201. You should. Some people still return 200s for that. It's aggravating. 202 accepted. 203 I have literally never gotten. 204s I actually get from a lot of different APIs, especially. I'm trying to think. Most of the ones I get 204s from are internal things with work, and then very, very well implemented APIs that I've used publicly. I can't think of them offhand, but I have gotten them. I have never gotten back a 205, 6, 7, 8, or 226. I've never even seen those before, but they do exist. So in this case, because we're doing gets, we should not get back anything other than a 200 that it was okay, or something greater than a 200. Either the URL redirection, like if it was in the 300s, or 400s where we've got client errors, bad requests, we've went, like, let's say this ICANN has dad joke decides to implement authentication someday. We may start getting 401s because we're not authenticated. 403, they've just shut it down, or they've blocked us, right? Like, you're forbidden, you can't come here. 404, they've deleted it and it's not coming back, and they're just like, man, this is not found. I have no idea what you're even looking for. 405's kind of common if you send off like a put request, and the API is expecting a post or a get. They may return you a 405 and say, hey, that put is not allowed. Some of these others I have not run into. I have not run into the 407. I don't have to deal with proxies very often, thankfully. But I know those are out there. Request timeouts, those happen quite a bit. That's very aggravating. But apparently that's acceptable. 404 not. If you're doing production level stuff, these are the kind of things you're going to need to implement. Something goofy like what we're doing here tonight, definitely not going to have to do that. What? I'm a teapot? That's hilarious. I have literally never seen that before, and I love it. I'm a teapot. I love that. April Fool's jokes. Who would have guessed? I've really never seen any of these upper 400s like this either. Rate limiting. This is something you could definitely see and implement yourself on this particular API if you're if you are in fact worried about abuse. You might say, oh, well, has this client made, how many requests have they made? A lot of times, personally, I implement this stuff at the load balancer level, right? Like I'll say, hey, at the load balancer, we're not going to have more than 1,000 requests every blah 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 from a given client, and that's where we would implement something like that. But you could certainly put it in your application. 500s are the very common error ones. So if the server itself is doinking up and it's like, no, I can't return your data, whatever. This bad gateway is usually if it's behind a proxy and there's some kind of proxy configuration error, or if the proxy server is up but the service that the proxy is serving is down, you might get a 502. Never really seen anything over the 504s. Yeah, I've definitely not seen a lot of these. So, but yeah, just check this page out. You can learn a lot from it. You actually use this stuff a lot more than you might think you would. Even in just everyday like web surfing, right? Like, you get weird errors and you think, oh, is my computer messed up? And if you're able to kind of know what these response codes mean, you can go, oh, I know it's not me. I can't cause the 500, I can't do this. That's their server is down. Their server is having problems, etc. So anyway, let's move on. Let's get back to coding. So if the response code is greater than 200, again, we're going to implement a to-do here and say come back, handle the bad response. And for now, we're just going to pass. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and accept exception again. Because again, we don't know exactly what we need to be catching here. So for now, we're just going to we're just going to throw a bullet at it, right? Catch everything. Anything that implements the exception class. And we will put in a to-do here to come back and handle exception. And for now, we're just going to pass. And then we have our dad joke equals response.json. We want to get, and over here it was joke. And we are going to return our dad joke. All right. So that's pretty easy. So far we've made, and we need to add a line here for Pep8 to be happy. Pep8, if you're wondering why I keep mentioning that, that's a kind of a style standard within Python. I mean, you can write this stuff however you want, you can run out the lines 200 characters long, you don't have to put spaces, whatever. You do have to put spaces in certain places, but if you wanted to write it just like that, the code will still work, but it's not Pep8 at that point. And so I like to keep my code Pep8 when possible. So just keeps it a little cleaner and easier to read. So let's make sure that at this point we've got our database, we've got our request client. Oh, hey, we forgot to list Flask in our requirements.txt. So we're going to go ahead and add that. That's why these IDEs are nice and handy. They remind you of things you haven't done, things you got wrong. All right, so we've got Flask, we've got our app creating, we've got our database, we've got our schema file, and we've got, still have our hello world in place. At some point, what we will do is replace this with a template file that will explain how to use, for end users, how to use our API functions. But for right now, we're not ready to do that just yet. So let's go ahead and fire up our application. It looks like it's already running, so we're going to stop it. And that was running here. Yep, sure enough. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and start it back up. And let me get us over to our API and switch over to Chrome. All right. And so let's verify that our Chuck fact still works. There is no such thing as a lesbian, just a woman who has never met Chuck Norris. Ouch. I don't know if I believe in that. Let's see here. Chuck Norris does not kick ass and take names. In fact, Chuck Norris kicks ass and assigns the corpse a number. It's currently recorded in the billions. Well, good old Chuck. All right. So our next one is that we need to verify is our dad joke. Uh-oh, internal server error. What have we done wrong here? This is why we test. And what we should be doing is writing actual tests, but I'm not doing that right now. So let's see here. No JSON object could be decoded. What? Okay, did we do something wrong here? So the way you read these stack traces is from the bottom up. Value error, no JSON object could be decoded. Okay, that's strange. Let's go over to our... Turn up some... Pump up the jams there. Let's see what it's content type. Application JSON. That looks pretty valid to me. Well, let's put it into our Python console. And we have a response equals .get, and it's HTTPS. I can has dad joke.com. Okay, we got back a 200, so we want to do print response dot JSON. Ooh, interesting. Oh, look at us. Oh, you know what? We forgot to set our header type. Let's see. Remember in the where is that API? Nope, it's not that one. This one. Here we go. So we have to set a header, which we did not do. Otherwise, it returns text. And if we look here through all this junk that it did not send us back. There it is. The other day, my wife asked me to pass her lipstick, but I accidentally passed her a glue stick. She still isn't talking to me. But all right, so we need to set our header. That's what we did wrong. Duh. So I'm going to do headers. And this needs to be a dictionary. I believe. I'm pretty sure it does. We'll find out. And actually, I don't think we need that to be params. I think we need that to be headers. Been a while since I used this, so we'll see. I'm usually pretty bad about getting it right the first time, as I'm sure you've noticed. So we'll set that here. I may have to ditch that semicolon. That would not be surprising at all. Okay, and then we'll go headers equals headers. Invalid header name. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. So we'll need to drop that semicolon because it's probably appending that for us. Yep. And what do you know, now it works. Okay. So we drop that semicolon. And then if we need to add additional headers up here, we certainly can. So like if we want to add a... oh, is it user agent? Is that what it's called? Let's see. Whoops. Pretty sure that's, yeah, user-agent. Okay, let's try that out. We can set that. And we'll call it our Nightbot client -0. Oh wait, we want a slash here. (0.1), and we can put a comment in here. Like, you know, hey, contact me at blah, blah, blah if you're having problems. Let's try that. Yep, that works. Print response.json. We still get a good response. And so this way, whenever, let's just show you what that looks like here. Okay. So curl, we can set these with curl as well. User-agent. Nightbot 0.1. And we're going to hit HTTP localhost and go in API and dad joke. Is it dad? Yeah, dad jokes. Held to connect. Oh, we're on the wrong port. Hang on. Let's switch over here. What port was it running on? 5000? Yeah, 5000. Still got us an internal server error. Let's see what caused that. Okay, here we go. That's coming in on this one. We may have to actually restart. Yeah, I think we're going to have to restart there after we change that. Let's try that. Yeah. Why are pirates called pirates? Because they are. Lame-o. Nice. Okay, so this doesn't actually show us what the headers are, but we could print those out. But when our service, let's go ahead and add that as a header, that we're using Nightbot. User agent. Nightbot 0.1. There we go. And so now when we make that request over to icanhasdadjoke.com, it's going to pass in that we want application JSON, so it'll return us a JSON object. And then it will also say, hey, the name of this client that's hitting you right now is Nightbot 0.1. Now we could add some more information in that so that the webmaster of that site would know who to contact should there be some issue with abuse. But this gives them a way where if they decide, hey, you know what, we don't want Nightbot hitting our service, you know, for whatever reason, it makes it easier for them to block you, or if they want to do serve you some kind of specific content. You know, it's proper etiquette to set a user agent. So this is also one of those things where you might find that you go places and they don't work in your web browser, and it's like, this requires Internet Explorer or Firefox or, you know, whatever, and all they're doing is checking your the header to make sure that, you know, it's some browser that they support, when in reality they probably support other stuff, or maybe the functionality you need doesn't matter for IE because you're not going to install whatever goofy thing they want, and you just need to see like their address or phone number or something. You can spoof that in your web browser and change it to be whatever you want. So, pro tip. All right, let's go back to coding now. So we're going to turn Chrome back off and hop back over here to our application. And now that we've got both of those API calls returning back our random jokes, right? We've got a dad joke and we've got a Chuck fact. Now what we'd like to do is start storing those ourselves, if we haven't already got it in the database. And then we also want to make it so if the response code is a bad response code and we've already got some entries in our database, we don't give the user nothing. We at least give them what we have, something that we have, right? So let's implement that. I think it'll be pretty simple. Before we do that, I'm going to take one more quick break for just a couple of minutes. So let me pop up this little message, and we shall turn that and turn that. And I have the same cat GIF. Enjoy that for a couple of minutes. I will be right back. get these screens changed back around here. And we'll get back into that code. All right. So, one of the first things we want to do is go ahead and start storing, if we don't already have it stored, these jokes that we're getting back. So, we are going to start with the dad joke. We're going to do a dad joke ID. And we're just going to use some shorthand here for that. Do it all on one line. Go with our response dot JSON and do a get on the, let's see, what was that? I think it was just ID on that one. Yep. Get ID. Okay. So this line here, we're going to be assigning dad joke to the first one and dad joke ID to the second. And that puts us out a little bit beyond the 80 characters for PEP 8, but that's okay. We can live with that. So, oh, but did we get that in there? Nope, we got that in the right place. So, the first thing we're going to need to do, if we're going to store that, is we need to look and see if it's already in our database. So, to do that, we are going to have to get the database, in which we've already got a function above. So we're going to do db equals getDB, and then db dot, and doesn't look like our IDE is going to help us out with the right syntax, so we're going to need to look it up the way we do. So I think it's probably just I don't know if there's an if not exists clause in SQLite or not. Let's see. Insert if not exists SQLite 3. Goodness. Okay. So this says here that looks like the best way to do it is going to be to insert into and then select on our ID where not exists. Man, I almost feel like doing a select and just seeing if that comes back with something that's not faster. If a record already contains a row where text is equal to text and ID is equal to ID, then the insert operation will be ignored. There's got to be a better way to do that. Aha, there's an insert or ignore. Okay, So that's what we want to do, is insert or ignore. I knew that seemed like a... if you never want to have duplicates, you should declare this as a table constraint. So we're going to have to go back and adjust our schema. And we want to unique we want remote ID and the same thing here. We want to unique this as well. Remote ID. Okay, so now we're going to need to regenerate our database. So from app import initdb, I believe is what we called that, and then initdb. All right. So we are lucky right now because our database is empty. So we don't have to solve the problem of how do we migrate our schema. We'll solve that another time. So we're going to go ahead and just delete that database and then just initialize it again. And now we should be good to go. Hello? Did it create the file? I don't know. Ugh. It did. So let's check that with our command line. Yeah, if I'd learned how to spell. All right, there we go. Let's go ahead and quit that. And let's get this added. So it looks like the SQL that we're going to want to run is insert or ignore into. Just put that there. And that should help us out in this department. Alright. Now, do we just run a query? Is there an actual insert? What do we do? Alright, it says in the documentation, additionally, it's a good idea to provide a query function that combines getting the cursor, executing, and fetching the results. Okay. This is a handy little function in combination with a row factory. Makes working with the database much more pleasant than it is by just using the raw cursor and connection objects. Here's how we can use it. do not see an insert. Nope. So that's okay. We're going to copy pasta again. We'll just copy this in from over here and take it straight over here. And so again, this function just came straight from the examples at the SQLite documentation page. So that is here. That's where I got that from. That's all we're going to do. So it's a function that takes a query, some arguments, and looks like if we're going to return a result, it's going to be all of the results. All right, it's okay. So let's go ahead and jump back over here to the code. Where these alien ear, in-ear ear drivers, earbuds, I don't know what the hell you call them. And man, they are awesome, but they make it extremely hot in your ear. And so after a few hours of having them in, they certainly don't hurt at all. It's almost like you're wearing nothing, but you can certainly feel the sweat, and it kind of gets a little annoying. So let's see. And I've been doing this in dead silence for the last 2.5 hours. I need some music. And unfortunately, for anyone that wants to hear what I'm listening to, I use a Mac, and it doesn't share sound devices very well. So, but if you're curious, right now I am playing Pogo Wonderland. It's pretty awesome stuff. So we had someone come into the Twitch chat earlier, and I totally missed it. And they were asking if I had any advice on career advice. Like, been applying for a long time, haven't had any luck finding a job. And man, I will tell you, this is how I got my very first job in IT. I didn't graduate from high school. I've got a GED. I didn't finish college. I've got about 90 hours towards my computer science degree. I was just not a school guy. I'm a hands-on kind of guy. I don't really like sitting in an academic setting. And so my best advice for anyone is just the way I did it. And that is to find some open source projects that you're interested in and just get involved. Find out if they're run by companies. The best example that comes to mind is what I get paid to do right now. And that is, I'm an OpenStack developer. And so there's a lot of companies out there that pay people good money to work on OpenStack. And so if you go get yourself involved in one of those projects and start committing code and working with the development team and, you know, just trying to insert yourself into it, you know, make yourself useful, right? Like, get involved and start doing it, and, you know, then build some relationships and say, hey, you know, are you guys hiring? Like, I'd like to work on this, you know, for a living. Is there any, you know, do y'all have any opportunities where I might be able to do that? And that can really help get your foot in the door. I started off as a Fedora packager probably 12 years ago, and started writing little scripts here and there. I was a big FreeBSD user for a long time, and a bunch of my friends were like, "Oh man, you need to try out Linux and try this out." And I had 4 or 5 machines at my house at the time, and I wanted to convert all of the stuff I had, all my users that I had, migrate all my data from FreeBSD to Linux, and I wrote scripts and I put those out on the internet and gave them to other people. And the very first job I had, believe it or not, they had used some of that stuff. They had seen it. They were able to do Google searches on me and see that I was a Fedora packager. And I was able to get a job. It didn't pay well. I'll be honest, it paid pretty horribly. But it got my foot in the door, and I ended up making a deal with them and said, "Hey, look, I'll take this low salary. But if after 90 days you see that I'm the real deal, then let's talk about a renegotiation of the salary and something that's a little closer to a livable wage and whatnot." And so they agreed to it. And 3 months into it, they were like, "Hey, we don't ever want you leaving. Like, what's it gonna take?" And I ended up getting a pretty nice raise, and I stayed with that company for 5 years. And before I moved on to where I'm at now, and I've been where I'm at now for 7. So it's really getting yourself out there and creating relationships. So that's definitely my best advice, and I hope whoever it was we missed out on getting to talk to about that is able to catch that advice and have some luck getting into the field, because Lord knows we definitely need qualified developers, qualified IT people. Hard to find. No shortage of work for them either. So, all right, let's get back to it though. Well, we've got an extra line here that we need to remove. Okay, and so down here we've got our database. Oh, it looks like we don't even need to get the database because we're just going to do it all in the query. That's nice. Okay, so we're going to query database. And we are going to, whoops, insert or ignore let's see, where was that at? Insert or ignore into, hey, I don't want to select all that. Insert or ignore into, and this one is dad jokes. All right, was that the name of our table? I've already forgotten. Dad joke, singular. We should probably change that, but I'm not going to dad joke. And we want, what do we name that? Remote ID and joke. Values. I believe this is the syntax. I don't even know. could be, we do this. Does that make sense? We're going to use a string format here. And we're going to use our dad joke ID. And our dad joke. And what have I done wrong? What's mad? Okay, I think that's what we had. There. A little easier to read that way, I think. Yeah, there we go. That looks right. See how that works. All right. Let's test that before we move too far along. Looks like we still have our API running, so we're going to turn it off and start it again. And let's see here on the Chrome. All right, let's go ahead and hit that API, see what happens. Wah, wah, wah. Let's see, what did we do wrong? Syntax error. Let's take a look at this stack trace together. Again, I remind you that most of my time is spent failing, and this is proof. All right, remember we read the stack trace from the bottom up. So we have an operational error near R, syntax error. Oh, good lordy, what have I done? Something tells me that there was probably some SQL syntax shenaniganery in this return that caused it to bork out near the word R that was in the text. That is my best bet, but I do not know that for sure. So, because I bet if we run this again, it's a different error. It'll be the same 500, but it will be an operational error near something else, or it might even work. Nope, it did not work. And I was right. So we went from syntax near R to syntax near many. So there's something that's coming back in our return that is not getting escaped properly. So let's see how we're supposed to escape. Let's see here. Telling you I spend all day failing. How to how to escape Granny. What the what? I almost want to see what that is. Seems like the risky click of the day. How to escape SQLite 3 text in let's switch that to with Python. In MySQL, like there's a safe insert that would take care of that for us. See, there's that question mark syntax that I was talking about. I think that's what we're going to need to do. Okay. Now that playlist wasn't very long. Got to put on some different music. I like Spotify. There's a cool thing I like to code to it. There's a playlist that Spotify keeps called Mellow Beats. It's like 5 hours long. It's pretty smooth. It doesn't get in my way. It's not distracting. It's got some nice beats. Alright, well, we'll try what I originally thought it needed to be. I still think I've got something wrong here. I guess I should just test it, but I don't want to. I want to get it right. I just know there's got to be a different way to type that. I don't know. That just seems so wrong. That can't be right. I don't think that's right. Let's see. It's certain this isn't going to be right. Oh. Might help if we get the syntax right. I still don't think it will. Ugh. Oh, I see. There. That looks righter. Now let's try this. Probably still won't work, but I bet we're getting closer. Incorrect number of bindings supplied. Shit. The current statement uses 2, and there were 11 supplied. Are you serious? What on earth? Good golly. I don't think I want to mess with this anymore tonight. It's 3:30 in the morning. I gotta be up in a few hours for work, so I'm gonna stop here. We'll pick up this tomorrow. Sometime. I don't know when, but tomorrow. Either in the afternoon, if I don't have any... If I get stuck and have nothing to do. More than likely tomorrow night after I finish work for the day, which is pretty late, after midnight. It will pick up again after then. So check it out tomorrow. We'll pick up where we left off. And then tomorrow afternoon I'll be streaming more of the OpenStack migration stuff I'm doing, where I am migrating a OpenStack instance I have that's set up with Federation, which is a type of authentication. We're going to be moving that from Shibboleth to ModMelon, and specifically targeting the OOO/RDO/OSP platform. So we'll be targeting specifically, even more specifically, a Red Hat /CentOS platform, and moving away from Shibboleth to Modmelon. So join me as I stumble through that and try and spend the day failing and reading documentation, trying to get that all figured out. So appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you on the next run. Have a good night.